Life inside the Arctic. By 2030, the Arctic shall be melted. Satellites made by NASA have scanned the world, which was once full of ice, and has given us the information that the Arctic is slowly melting away, and this year we have reached an all-time low in ice around the Arctic. On September 17, 2014, satellites recorded the ice to be around 1.94 million square miles, making it the sixth lowest extent of ice ever recorded. Arctic sea ice acts as a freezer to the planet. When the sun shines down on it, 90% of the energy is reflected off of it, and the other 10% is left to be absorbed by the darker sea. Since 1979, NASA has been monitoring the Arctic with satellites. NASA says since 1979, the world has lost the amount of ice that could cover 1/3 of the United States. Over the years, the pattern of ice melting and freezing has been pretty consistent, but the long-term trend is a sad reality. We are losing a significant amount of ice. A large part as to why we have been losing ice is due to heat. The Arctic seas are heating up. Over the last 10 years, each year the Arctic's temperature rises 2 to 3 times the global average. So the increases in the global temperature have caused a decrease in the thickness of ice caps. It is important that we look at the Arctic sea ice and try and make a change to the acceleration of ice caps melting. This is a serious issue and a significant symbol of a changing planet. If our Arctic ice caps continue to melt in this rapid way, 4,230 species from mammals to plants shall be overthrown from their habitat and killed, as where they live is the Arctic. The melting of the Arctic also poses a threat to humans, especially people who live in the coastal areas of the world. At the rate the ice is melting, sea levels will eventually rise 2 to 3 inches a year. This means by the year 2030, all of Florida will be underwater. Cities like New York, London, Bangladesh, and even our very own San Francisco Bay will be flooded. Water will come inland, and each of us will be knee-deep in water. Companies like Google, Motorola, and Lockheed Martin will be flooded and destroyed. The cities have come up with plans to stop the water from flooding. They have plans for super dams and levees, but these haven't quite been perfected. For now, scientists and engineers are finding ways to reduce greenhouse gases and biofuels that are polluting our earth.
The planet covered in ice and surrounded by an ocean located at the top of the world. The low temperature at the average winter temperature is 34 degrees in the Arctic tundra, and in the summer it's usually 3 to 12 degrees. Up there, freezing the water and around it, creating a giant landmass of ice and snow about 14.5 million square kilometers long. The abiotic factors that affect the Arctic are usually strong winds, rainfall. There is very little each year, but the soil is obtained well enough for plants to grow. Short summers days are not that hot, no trees, photosynthesis, and long and cold winters will pre-frost layers of soil. Polar bears are marine animals and spend much of their time on the Arctic sea ice. Many adaptations make polar bears unique, suited to life in the Arctic and icy habitats. Their fur is thicker than any other bear and covers even their face for warmth, the Arctic, and traction on ice. A thick layer of blubber beneath their fur provides buoyancy and insulation. The long neck and narrow skull of the bear probably aid in streamlining the animal in the water while warming the air at their breath, and their front feet are large, flat, and oral-like, making them excellent swimmers. Walruses are cinnamon brown in color. They are able to turn their hind flippers forward to aid in movement on land. Their flippers are large and each have 5 digits. Males have special air scapes that are used to make a belly-like sound. Both male and female have large tusks that are used for defense, cutting through ice and getting out of the water. The tusk can be more than 3 feet long in males and about 2.5 feet long in female.
There are a few solutions for saving the melting Arctic. The first are simple and can be done by anyone. They include using automobiles as little as possible, but if biking or walking places is not possible, using public transport or carpooling. If having a car is absolutely necessary, driving a fuel-efficient one will create the least damage. Also, making sure your home or apartment is insulated is important so that heaters can be used less during the winter. Aside from these, there are a couple of bigger ideas. The first is releasing sulfate into the atmosphere. As described by Ashley Vance of Bloomberg, this would be done to mimic when Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines exploded in 1991, which, as Vance describes, briefly reversed most of the global warming that had occurred since the start of the Industrial Revolution. The plan is to use modified business jets to drop small amounts of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere. This idea would cost about 0.01% of the annual world GDP, or in other words, not a lot. However, while this idea is cost-effective and could theoretically slow down the melting of the Arctic, there are many possible consequences. The plan risks ripping the ozone layer apart completely, and is essentially adding one pollutant to counteract the other. It could also bleach coral reefs and their ecosystems, and it isn't doing anything to help ocean acidification. With all of these dire possibilities, this plan is more of a backup than a forefront. The next plan is to actually refreeze the Arctic. As Professor David Keith described to Canadian newspaper The Windsor Star, the whole thing would cost about $8 billion a year, using what he calls a few modified Gulfstream jets and the right amount of aerosols in the right place. This plan, while even less permanent than the release of sulfates, would be proved to be much better, as it does not risk causing more harm than good. However, even then, there's a lot more research to be done, and even Keith, who has done multiple papers on the cause, says that geoengineering may be a viable source to a climate emergency, such as a sudden collapse of ice sheets or a killing drought.
Thanks for watching. We hoped you learned a little bit more about the Arctic's ecosystem. May the odds be ever in our favour.